Hello and welcome again to Word of Life Lutheran Church's The Narrow Path. It's been a while since we've done an episode, so we're really excited about this one. At Word of Life Lutheran Church here in Fairfield, I'm Pastor Jamie Strickler. We interview people who have had a tremendous conversion when they encounter Christ. At the Narrow Path, we believe that we walk down a narrow path in life, and there's ditches on both sides. On the left side is the gospel ditch, on the right, or the law ditch. On the right side is the gospel ditch. If someone has fallen into the law ditch, they think that they're justified before God by their good works and by following the law. And they need someone to bring them the gospel, to claim to them that you're justified on account of Christ and Christ alone. It brings them back to the center of the road. Or if they fall off into the gospel ditch on the right, they believe that since Christ has called them and chosen them, they can act however they want and they no longer have to follow the law. To those folks, we come and we preach the law. The law again brings them back to the center. So it's the tension between law and gospel in which we walk in our lives. The law subduing the sinful flesh so that it can become a good servant to the neighbor, and the gospel message enhancing and building within us the new creation until the day we die, and all that's left is a new creation that ascends into heaven with Christ. Here today we have Harold Wilson of Des Moines. Harold has done some dangerous things in his past, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about his past, what he's come through, what's happened to him, what Christ has done for him, and a little bit about the ministry that he does today. Welcome, Harold.
Thank you, Jim.
Tell us, Harold, a little bit about your upbringing and your past life in crime.
Well, it's very important to understand that part of my addiction was to hide everything that happened in my upbringing. My father was an alcoholic. He was very abusive physically. I remember the first time that he physically hit me. I was about 6 years old, and I had lost a fight on my way home from school, and he told me he was going to make a man out of me, as much as a man as he was, and he had beaten me to the point where I went and beat the other kid who beat me up, you know, and this is the way I grew up. Alcohol and drugs were very available in my family. It was in constant usage. At the age of 12, I smoked pot for the first time. It was on my birthday. It was headed to a concert. That was my birthday present from my brothers, you know, and it was a real interesting thing for me because it took about 2 weeks, and we went from pot to heroin and all the other good things they were doing. By the time I was 13, I was a full-blown heroin addict. And this was very acceptable in a lot of ways in my family, because by the time Mom and Dad got to me, I'm next to the youngest of seven of us. I'm number 6 in line. They were pretty tired by the time I got there, you know. Late 60s and early 70s, and the heroin started to come very easy to me. My brothers were addicts. My oldest sister was an addict, still is. It just came real easy, but by the time I was 15, I decided I wanted to do something different and make a business out of it. So we started selling heroin and cocaine by the time I was 15. And that worked real well for a long time. If you're an addict, you can laugh now because it's, you know, it's a joke. At 15, I was a total junkie. I never had teenage years. My life was built on a business of drugs, sex, because along with the drugs and the money came the sex. Most of them from my brother's girlfriends, you know, a real pleasant thing. I led my life this way up until I shot a man when I was 15 and went to jail. I had the option of either going to prison or going into the military. I chose the military. That went over not so good either. I was there for 4 years. I went in, and I think it was like 28 days after my 17th birthday. They sent me to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then I went on to Special Forces training. So where else does the military send a junkie but to Colombia to deal with cocoa refineries? And it was a beautiful thing for about 4 years. All the cocaine I ever wanted, bringing it back and forth to the States through different lines. After the military, I just flipped out. The reason I left that is because my partner, me and him were down doing our job, and he got killed. And really the mental value of him getting killed totally destroyed me. There was nothing great, there was nothing fantastic, there was no more fun in life. At that point in time, I went to come home. I came home to Des Moines for a while. Bought a motorcycle, decided I was going to go see the world. So I jumped on the bike and took off and spent 6 months traveling the country, doing the drug thing, town to town. It was absolutely perfect for me. Came home when my mom got sick. She had cancer. And figured that if I was going to sell dope, I needed a family. I needed a nice front to make it work. So I started working at places where, you know, good jobs, making good money, and advancing very quickly. I looked good in society, had a heck of a dope business. It was all good up to that point. You know, that lasted for a very, very long time. I have 2 beautiful sons, and decided that I did not want their life to be built around me being a dope dealer. So I decided to clean up for a little bit, and it worked for a little bit. I went into recovery, make the wife happy, make the kids happy, make everybody in the world happy, but I was still using. This went on until I was 47. I had been through 3 marriages at that time. You know, and I got to tell you this because it's kind of funny. In a junkie's world or an alcoholic's world, you know, you hear them Las Vegas nightmares where you wake up married. Well, that literally happened to me.
Oh my.
Oh, it was beautiful. Went out for a long weekend, partying in this and that, and wake up in a suite married, and that was wife number 2. Hi, good to see you again. It just... life was crazy. It's always been real crazy. And at 47, I had been divorced 3 times, an ironworking superintendent, and a full-blown junkie again. God reached in and took my life at 47. I was partying way too hard, drinking way too much. In the morning of February 16th, he decided to end the life of the old Harold. A heart attack, and it pretty well did it. I woke up 3.5 days later with my sons in the room, my girlfriend in the room at the time, and a friend of mine who's an ex-biker. He had turned minister, and me and him had quite the little conversation. And I believe I told you this before, but I ended up with a Bible on one knee, a loaded gun on the other, and he told me, brother, we're going to get this right today. And he came to me the only way that I would understand. And God stepped into my life that day, and it's a tremendous, tremendous thing. Since that time, I had to walk away and leave my old life completely. He's brought me on a path that brought me back home. He brought me into the life of the homeless, and which has been a tremendous, tremendous journey with these guys. I deal with well over 100 homeless people in downtown Des Moines, and they're fascinating folks. They're my whole life, you know. And I have the pleasure and the privilege of watching them and talking to them about what God has done for me. And then being a small part of them coming to Christ. And it's just absolutely incredible.
So with the homeless folks and the current addicts and those desiring to recover, you come from a place of validity. You've got your street credits because you're not telling them something you read in a book or something you heard in a speech, but you're visiting with them and telling them what happened to you. I've been where you are, and that validity is a rare, rare thing. And so I can see where you think that your past life was a blessing, or you believe that your past life was a blessing, because it allows you then to go and sit and say, hey, don't mess with me. I've been where you've been. Listen to me. This is where it leads, and this is what Christ can do for you. Is that about right?
That's an absolutely perfect way of putting it. Well, the people that I deal with come from broken homes. 90% of them have had some kind of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. They are hardcore street addicts. They are hardcore homeless. We're talking second, third generation homeless right now, and second, third generation of addictions in many different ways. And the addictions range from, just pill freaks. I'm seeing a lot of what they call Skittle parties come up, which is you go to mom and dad's medicine cabinet and you pull out 4 or 5 different kinds of pills and different colors, and then they all get together and they put them in a bowl and just whatever you grab and eat. That's becoming very popular, which is incredibly insane. I see a lot of sexual addictions coming up with the young ladies who are hardcore drug addicts are now on the internet doing strip shows. They're into prostitution. They are just not worth, in their minds, they're not worth saving. In my eyes, everybody is worth saving. Somebody took the time to help save me. Christ came into my life and has done this for me, and allowed me to become a new man. So yeah, when I go to the street, I'm bringing experience. We got a lot of life experience. I can't learn from somebody who hasn't been there. I'm not too sure they ever could either. And I know that you have dealt with the homeless over the years, and it's a very special breed. They are very hard to reach. It's very frustrating sometimes and almost scary, and it is heartbreaking a lot of times. A couple weeks ago, I was dealing with a young man over the last 6 months who had given up, and he had committed suicide. And they call it a wonderful thing of an accidental overdose, but nobody accidentally overdoses on that much. It's just a fact of the matter. The suicide rate is very high in homelessness, but we're seeing a miracle happen too. I don't want to put an all-out negative on this. I'm watching them come to Christ more. I'm watching them come out. I'm watching them build a little trust with me. And we are actually getting them situated in drug treatment centers and apartments. It's a pretty fascinating journey with them, and it's something that I'm just so proud that God allows me to do.
Being deemed holy herald amongst some of the homeless, or the reverend or preacher by many drug dealers in downtown Des Moines, I can imagine it's been an adventure. And I would suspect that, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, that you just walk in and you ask the drug dealers to give up their customers and they just gladly hand them over to you. But I'd imagine that's probably not the case now, is it, Harold? Tell us a little bit about how you find these kids and what lengths that you're willing to go to rescue them.
Well, I have 2 gentlemen that are very strong Christians with me, and they're both into recovery too. The danger you never really think about, but and I was sharing this earlier, that the first time we did it, we were sitting at a friend's house and we was doing a little Bible study, the 3 of us, because we're all ex-bikers, we're all ex-military, we're all ex-this, that, and the other thing, And a friend of his called and said his daughter had relapsed and went into a crack house, and we knew that they was running a prostitution ring out of this crack house. How we find them is the other street kids. Street kids, if they trust you, will tell you everything in the world. It takes a long time, and it's a very hard thing to build with them. But you got to be true and faithful to them. If you say something, you got to go through with it. You got to try your best. You got to treat them like human beings, and this is the biggest part of this. So we got this phone call anyway, and the 3 of us were sitting there talking, and the one guy says, I won't use their names just for simple protection of them and their family, that we needed to go get this girl, and if we was interested in going, and I was all in from the very get-go. And we walked up, and silly me, I walk up and knock on a door. of a crack house and expect them to open it up, right? You know, I didn't look like a cop. I don't look like a cop, and I sure don't look like any kind of minister. And we walked back. They locked the door, and we heard commotion inside. And I walked over to picked up a 18-pound sledgehammer, which is very efficient about taking off a door or the whole frame. It doesn't matter either way. The danger you never really think about. Jamie, you can't think about it. You know, that's one of God's children in there. And the way I see it as a Christian man is that sometimes you just got to go find a lost sheep. Mm-hmm. Jesus did. He left 99 to go get one. Mm-hmm. Everything worked out pretty good for him. You know, the danger you never really think about. We go in hard, very hard. None of us are settled gentlemen. We're not gentlemen at all in a lot of ways at that point in time. The funny thing, though, is when we get them and bring them out, I always ask if, you know, we can pray for somebody in the house, you know, because I think that's what God intends me to do. And it sounds funny, but that's what I do. I stop and have actually prayed for people coming out of a dope house that we just took a door off, you know. And thanks to the people in Des Moines, because the people that know that we do this are very supportive of us. And we haven't had any other issues with people who see us coming, and now they just kind of hand them over to us, you know, because they know one way or the other we're coming in to get them. Mm-hmm. And the nickname preacher I hold very high. I'm very proud of that. Mm-hmm. And so now there's really no issues at all, because if you don't give them up, we're going to go get them anyway. So, and it's hard to get that kind of I don't want to say reputation, but it's hard to get people to turn somebody over they can make a ton of money off of. Mm. But they also know that we're good guys, we're doing right, even though the bad guys even know this too, which is absolutely outrageous, that we're going to do right. We're going to try to get them help. And maybe they have to look in their own hearts at that point in time. Maybe God shines a little bit on them. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're just scared of 3 crazy guys coming through a door. I don't know what the deal is, but it works. Mm-hmm.
Well, the number of years I've worked with the homeless and with drug and alcohol dependent folks, I've learned that it's a subculture and it's a drug culture, and that reputation is everything. And you have to gain a reputation, you have to earn a reputation, and you actually have to have someone vouch for you to even be considered worthy of their time, or not as a mark. And so reputation is definitely what you've got to build, and it sounds like you've built it. And it's interesting to me that you use a hammer. Martin Luther, of course, my hero, my favorite preacher, called it the hammer of God, the left hand of God. It's the law. He uses a hammer to the law itself to pound us into submission, to realize that we can't live up to God's standards. But then he brings the gospel to resurrect us. So the left hand of God, the hammer of the left hand of God, is the law. And it keeps us in place. It subdues the sinful flesh, the desires of the flesh, so that they can become a benefit to the neighbor and not a detriment to the neighbor. And then the gospel raises the new creation, which then spreads the message. So I think I'm going to write a book called Holy Herald and His Hammer of God someday. What do you think of that?
I think it'd be better off titled as God's Will.
Amen, brother.
I truly think that this is God's will. And you know, the crack dealers I'm dealing with now were the coke dealers that I dealt with when I was out. And so we're literally 2nd and 3rd generation. So I think this is all God's will.
And it's hard to believe, maybe for some of you, that it's right in the middle of downtown Des Moines. You know, it's in the middle of a cornfield, if you will. However, drugs and addiction, they know no cultural bounds. They know no societal bounds. And quite frankly, the cornfields around here are wonderful places for meth kitchens to be cooking their meth. They're hidden, they're subdued, they're secluded. And Iowa really has become the meth capital of the world to some degree. And it's sad. But it's crusaders like Harold and like his partners and others like him that are trying to get the word out, because awareness is everything. You got to become aware of what's going on. We can't ignore this any longer. I know here in Fairfield, Iowa, the new K2, the synthetic marijuana, is being sold less than half a mile from this church. It's legal. And yes, there are some that are fighting to make it illegal, but in the meantime, the store that's selling it is less than half a block from the middle school here in town. And middle school kids can legally walk half a block, buy this synthetic drug, and smoke it. And it's causing brain damage, it's causing suicidal tendencies, it's causing comas. And it's awareness, awareness, awareness. You cannot, as a parent, become aware enough of what's going on. And if it happens here in small town Iowa, it's got to be happening where you are as well. So use this information as a key, as a tool, as a teaching instrument to make other parents aware. We've got to get the word out. We've got to protect our kids. Christ sent us to preach the gospel. He sent us to be in the world, not of it. And if we are looking to the sky, as the disciples were in the book of Acts, watching Jesus ascend into heaven, and we're not doing the work of Christ. What did the angel of the Lord come and tell the disciples? What are you looking up for? Go do your job. Did he not just say that you'll be my witnesses to the ends of the world? Go and do your work. Stop looking at the sky. Stop looking at your church as a building and a place where you go on Sunday in a country club, and get out there and get involved and be in the world and spread the gospel of Christ to the people that need it, the people that need to hear it, because everyone needs a positive word from their Lord. And God has called you. God has called you sitting there in the audience right now to be a preacher, to be a deliverer of that word. With the tsunamis, with the hurricanes, with the nuclear meltdowns, with the tornadoes here in the United States, with the government deficit, with loss of jobs, with drug and alcohol addictions, with cancer and muscular dystrophy, and you name it. I mean, the world needs a good word from the Lord. They need preachers called and sent. And I don't mean by vocation. You can be a preacher right where you are. How many people do you walk by during the day and don't pay any attention to? Don't say hi to? Like Harold said, you have to treat them like human beings. Next time you're walking down the street or walking through a building and you see a custodian, stop, say hi, ask them how their day's going. Do you know how many times they get passed by and treated like not a human every day? You see a homeless man on the street begging for money. Don't stop and give him money, because he's probably going to misspend it, but stop and visit with him. How are you doing? Hey, tell me, what brings you here? Listen to their story. Offer to buy him a cup of coffee. Get to know him. Validate him for as a human. So at least for 5 minutes of his day, he's not some homeless piece of trash thrown to the side. There's people in your life every day. If you're in the hospital having routine surgery, there's nurses that come and love and serve you. Say hi to them. Ask them how their day's doing. If you're in a nursing home, there's aides all the time coming in and out of your room. Ask them how they're doing. If you're at school, there's children and teachers and people that come to visit all the time. There is nowhere that you go where there's not people that need to be recognized and validated as a human. There is nowhere that you can go that people don't need a positive word for our Lord. This is the commission that Christ has sent us. This is what I'm commending you to go and do. Go and do. Stop sitting on your keister looking at the sky waiting for Jesus to return. He's going to come back whether you're sitting there watching or not. You go out and you be busy amongst the work of the Lord, and when he comes back, he will say to you those fantastic words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Well, thank you again, Harold, for coming and visiting with us, and thank you for being so painfully honest about your past and where you've been and where you're going. And thank you for being a crusader for Christ and just putting yourself aside and pouring yourself out for the love and service to a neighbor that Christ has called us to do. Now, Harold is available to come and speak. If you would like to get in touch with Harold, Jason, our sound man here of Strong Studios, who publishes all our videos, you can contact us and we can get you in touch with Harold at our website or our email address or our phone number. And please remember that this is all done on a shoestring budget at the Narrow Path. Your donations are welcome. Just send them to the Narrow Path in care of Word of Life Lutheran Church, P.O. Box 27, Fairfield, Iowa, 52556. And if you'd like to help Harold fund his ministry, or if you'd like to offer him an encouraging word, send a letter. You can send it to our church address and we'll make sure he gets it. But please, I encourage you to make your community aware of what's going on in the world today. And call me or email us or get a hold of us so that we can send Harold out to make your folks aware, to make your community aware of what's going on in your backyard. But for now, we'll end this, and we just ask that you continue walking that narrow path between the tension and the law and gospel. For Word of Life Lutheran Church, The Narrow Path, I'm Pastor Jamie Strickler. Thank you.